everyone. How very nice to see you. Pardon my lateness, had some technical difficulties. I'm very, very glad that you're here. Kirsten is also here. You will see her in the list as Kirsten Enriquez. If you're having any technical issues, you can send a question to her and she will help you resolve them. And I'm going to be sharing a PowerPoint. I'll share my screen with you where I have a PowerPoint. You can double click on that to see that, or you can double click on my image if you want to see me live. All right, let's get started talking about when our children get really, really angry. I'm going to share my screen with you real quick. And here we go. When your child gets really angry, we're going to talk about what to do and what not to do. I'm Rebecca Freeling with Wits End Parenting. I work with parents to help them learn how to parent intense kids. I'll tell you more about how I work with parents after the webinar. I'm going to be showing the slides, like I said, and you can choose to look at the slides or look at my live picture. Just double click on the one that you want to have enlarged. Now, if you have a child who gets really, really angry, they yell, scream, even throw things or get physically aggressive, and this is a big problem for you, then you've come to the right place. Today, I'm going to share with you the best ways to respond when your child is having a meltdown or being physically aggressive. I'm going to tell you why the typical advice we hear, even from parenting experts, doesn't always work. And I'll share with you things you can do to not only increase the intensity and frequency of the meltdowns, but also to make them a lot less stressful. What I'll share with you will even empower and strengthen your child. Now, there are three main reasons why I'm inspired by working with kids in the way that I'll show you. First, these methods really do work. Meltdowns decrease, and when they do happen, they don't derail the whole family. Second, these tools improve the relationship that you have with your child. You'll be giving them more of the support that they really need when they're angry. And they'll trust you more, and they'll learn that they can share their difficult feelings with you. Third, your child will feel more empowered. They'll learn that intense emotions are okay, and they'll learn how to contain them. Kids really do feel more confident when they learn self-management and emotional regulation. That growth in emotional maturity builds their self-esteem. So before I get started, I want to share a bit about myself and my experience working with emotionally intense kids. I've been working with these powerful little people for over 30 years. I really started to develop my approach when I was a teacher and a school director. When I was teaching, I met many very strong-willed, emotionally intense, quirky, volatile kids. People would see them and say, these kids aren't normal. They were on the far end of the difficult behavior spectrum. And I was discouraged to find that the excellent teacher education program I attended didn't prepare me to really teach them. Other teachers felt the same, and they would kick them out of their classrooms saying they didn't have the resources to meet their needs. But as it happened, part of my training was in Waldorf education. This approach is especially child-centered, and we were encouraged to really see each individual child as a complete person and not a blank slate. So we were taught to observe with curiosity. What does this child need? It was this part of my training, not the techniques or the curriculum, that gave me the perspective and confidence I need to find the things that really did work to transform these intense behavior problems. Because I discovered how to handle the anger and aggression in our school, we never had to kick anyone out, ever. All the kids learned what they needed to learn to move to the next grade. And the most difficult kids became leaders and helpers that the other kids could look up to. I'm sorry to report that I did not find a magic button to push that makes the anger and aggression go away. These solutions take work and focus, and that's hard when you're already overwhelmed. And like you, I wished that there was a way to make the kids just behave like a normal person. I have very vivid memories of the time before I knew what to do with these kids and the hopelessness that I felt. Being an intense person myself, I was very triggered by the disrespect and outright defiance that I received from them. I felt afraid that there might be something wrong with them. I got very frustrated and angry myself. That sent me down to feeling ashamed and feeling like I shouldn't be with kids at all because I was so bad at keeping my cool. Sound familiar? But once I learned how to help and guide them, I felt hope and confidence. Problems truly became opportunities, and the relationships I had with the kids surpassed all my expectations. Then when my turn as a parent came around, I was ready for everything this intense, brilliant, defiant little person threw at me. So I want to help you prepare mentally for this information. You're going to hear about tools and strategies to use right now. And I want to encourage you to do that right now, right after the webinar. I hear parents say, oh, it's all so crazy now. I'll file this away and work on it later. But the truth is, you're always going to be working in the context of real life. And let's face it, real life is crazy. So I want to say now's the time to take action. Today is the day that you can begin to make changes that will bring you fewer meltdowns, a better relationship with your child, and help your child grow in emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. People are also asking me, with the extra stress that COVID-19 is bringing, is this really the time to be raising expectations? Shouldn't we be loosening things up for kids? Actually, the answer is, it depends on the expectations. But now really is the time to manage and contain your child's anger response. It's important to reduce stress wherever you can. The pandemic is bringing incredible challenges and stresses. Getting the anger under control is going to remove some of the key stressors for you and your child. The way your child is currently expressing their anger is a pattern and a habit. The longer it goes on, the harder it will be to change. So now is the best time. The older they get, the harder it is to change. When you teach your child how to manage their anger, they're happier, they have higher self-esteem, and you have a whole lot less stress, and you get to enjoy being with them more. So let's get on it, shall we? To start, let's talk about 3 myths and some mistakes that people make when they try to help kids manage their strong emotions. And I want to be clear why I'm telling you about these. It's not just that these things don't work. It's that they can make things worse. They can add fuel to an already raging fire. When you do these things with intense kids, it can trigger their resistance. And when you trigger their resistance, you're starting a fight, and no one's going to win. They have a strong need for autonomy. So if you can avoid triggering their resistance, you're halfway to the goal of helping them be less angry and more cooperative. So here's myth number 1. There's something wrong. A lot of people think that something is wrong with an emotionally intense person who gets extremely angry. But emotional intensity is a temperament trait, not a character flaw. What do I mean by temperament? Traits like introversion and extroversion, being easygoing, having a high need for control, being type A, and so on. Generally speaking, psychologists and psychiatrists agree that traits like these are just part of someone's personality. Some may even have a genetic component. Emotional intensity is part of temperament. In fact, it's part of a cluster of traits that are usually found together: low frustration tolerance, a high need for control, and dedication, commitment to an ideal, passion, sensitivity. These are all normal personality traits. Okay, fine. Emotional intensity is normal. But what about meltdowns? What about an hour-long tantrum? Is that normal? Well, it's at the far end of normal, but that doesn't mean that something is wrong. It also doesn't mean that you just have to live with it. But you'll have a much easier time taking in what I'm going to tell you if you keep in mind what these things are not. They are not a sign of mental illness. They are not a sign of trauma. They are not a neurological disorder. They are simply emotional expression, a perfectly normal part of human experience. They might reflect emotional immaturity. Kids have not learned to manage their frustration with the evidence when they're they have not learned to manage their frustration when confronted with the evidence that they are not in fact in charge of everything. And it's very normal for humans to get very angry. And it's healthy for them to express this anger emotionally and physically. But that doesn't mean we should allow kids to be mean, aggressive, or violent. They can and should be taught to have their meltdown without being mean to other people. All right, now the second myth is this: if they know better, they do better. You hear experts say this. This idea gets played out in two main ways. One way is an assumption that if only we could get the child to understand and verbalize what they're feeling, they won't have to act out so intensely. This is where we get tools and strategies like feelings identification charts, asking the child to reflect on a situation, and asking the child to verbalize what they're feeling. Oh, it looks like you're angry that you couldn't go over to Molly's house today. What could you do instead of hitting me? Another way this idea of if they know better, they'll do better plays out is with the assumption that if the child could just get perspective, they wouldn't be so angry. If the child just understood that this was not a big deal, they'd be okay and they wouldn't have a meltdown. But here's what's wrong with the focus on understanding and verbalizing. First, trying to get somebody to be verbal and rational when they're really, really angry doesn't work if they're really angry. The fact is, we actually use different parts of our brain for emotions, especially intense emotions, and verbal rational thought. I don't know how many parents have said to me, there's nothing I can say to her to bring her down when she's like this. And that is a true statement. We can't expect to reach an emotionally overwhelmed person with rational thought, no matter their age. But this looks like it works with some kids, and that makes it hard for us. One reason verbalization may work with some kids is that a lot of the time, these kids' emotions aren't as intense, and they do have more access in that moment to their rational side. But it's not fair to ask this of an emotionally intense child. It will actually make things worse. Now, another thing that's wrong with the focus on understanding is this. Strong-willed kids have a lot of respect for their own experience and perspective. They are not easily swayed by our attempts to change their mindset or their perspective. If you tell them it's not a big deal when they think it's a big deal, the only thing that happens is they think you're lying to them and they feel disrespected. These kids will actually game the system to get what they want. Alex, who was a 4-year-old, demonstrated complete understanding of how his emoticons feeling chart worked. His mom told him he needed to stop reading books and go brush his teeth. When he hit the ceiling, she pointed to the chart and said, "Oh, it looks like you're frustrated, honey. Let's look at what the strategy is for that. Do you want to hit the couch?" He angrily replied, "No, I'm not frustrated. I'm bored. And the strategy for that is reading books." And he triumphantly picked up his book and went back to reading. So these tools are good for building emotional intelligence and vocabulary, but they don't change behavior for really intense kids. Now I'm going to share with you the third myth. Connection is the answer. Oh, I'm going to hear about this one. I'm saying this is a myth about behavior change. I'm not saying we don't need to connect with our kids. Of course, good connection is essential for every living being. But connection-first strategies can really backfire with an intense child in the middle of a meltdown. Here's what I mean. First, let's take empathy. Your child is angry, yelling, and wanting to hurt someone. You say in a very soothing, gentle voice, "Yes, this is really frustrating for you. I can see that." But what happens when you do that? It makes them even angrier. It actually escalates their response. An intense meltdown is visceral. There's a lot of physical energy that comes with strong anger. A person in that state is feeling compelled to express that anger, and they're not just going to hop the anger track and jump on the soothing, calm track. And remember, strong-willed kids know their mind and value their own experience. So when you respond to their rage with a calm, cajoling tone, it frustrates them further. It tells them you don't understand, you don't respect them, and you can't help. Here's another way that the connection-first thinking can backfire. This advice is given in attachment parenting. Stay close to an angry child, even if they are being mean or physically hurting you. This method of parenting is based on attachment theory. And one assumption of attachment parenting is that the main reason kids act out is that they don't feel connected to you. I disagree. It may be true in some instances, but there are a lot of other reasons for anger and oppositional behavior besides a feeling of disconnect. For example, frustration, wanting something they can't have, hearing bad news like we're out of ice cream. And here's a crucial point. Staying close to an aggressive child teaches them that it's okay to hurt you. Even if you say, "I can't let you hurt me," even if you tell them that's not okay, your behavior shows them that they can and that it is okay. By extension, it teaches them that they should stay close to someone who is hurting them. And that is not the kind of modeling we want to be doing. Okay, so I've just told you about some myths and some mistakes that people make trying to manage an emotionally intense child's strong feelings. And I want to say again that understanding what not to do is important, because if you do these things, you will likely make the situation worse. And if you stop doing them, things will get better. So now let's turn to 5 things that you should do instead. First thing you should be doing to manage your child's intense emotions is to allow them. All humans need a healthy option for expressing their emotions instead of being told that they are too much or otherwise not okay. This message gets conveyed directly and indirectly. When you resist your child's emotions, they get the message that those emotions are not okay and you can't handle them. What's more, your resistance triggers their resistance and makes the anger worse. Not adding fuel to the fire is part of the solution, and it's essential to your progress. So what are you doing when you're allowing? What does that look like in the moment? First, don't engage. Just let it be. If your child doesn't want to eat the soup you just made, he yells when you put it on the table. Engaging would be, "Oh, you don't like it, but it's your favorite. Well, don't get so upset. You're lucky you have food. Some kids don't get enough food. I worked to make this for you, and I worked to buy this food. You're so ungrateful. Don't engage with the intention of stopping the anger or with the intention of changing the child's perspective. Second, if you can do this without sarcasm or mocking, reflect. We're not reflecting on the feeling, we're reflecting the feeling itself. Reflect the tone. If you can do this well, your child feels that you do get it, that this is a big deal. Remember your child's natural desire for control. Since that desire isn't being directed at you because you're not resisting, the need for control can be directed toward solving the problem. Here's how one dad did it with his 6-year-old daughter. He forgot to bring a snack when he picked her up from school. She asked for the snack, and he said, I forgot it. She went from 0 to 60 in no time flat. She said, you didn't bring my snack. You're a bad dad. He matched her tone and said, I know. I don't have it. I don't know what to do. What's going to happen now? After a minute or so of this, the girl said, come on, Dad, just take me home. I'll get a snack there. He allowed her reaction and he reflected her tone. She saw that this was a big deal, and he left the problem solving to her. If he had suggested waiting until she got home, she would have rejected the idea outright and continued on to the meltdown. This dad was highly skeptical of this strategy. It felt counterintuitive to him, like it might feel to you. But in that moment, he threw reason to the wind and went with it. Now he's totally hooked on this non-resistance thing, as he calls it. All right, we're going to allow our kids to express their strong emotions. And we've seen how this attitude can actually prevent meltdowns. But we also have to teach children how to contain that anger to keep it from becoming a problem. We want to guide kids into expressing the anger safely so that no one and nothing gets hurt. One of the best ways to contain intense anger is to create some physical space where your child can express their anger in a physical way. I call this a cool down room, or if we can't dedicate a whole room to it, a cool down area. This is a dedicated space where people can yell, stomp, punch, bang, rip, break, and throw. It could be their bedroom. It could be the corner of the room. It could be outside. The biggest obstacles for parents doing this are, 1, there's no extra space. 2, their child won't use the space. Or 3, they can't physically move their child into the space. But working this out is part of my listening and emotional regulation program. I'm going to invite you to that program at the end of the webinar. Here's how one family managed it. They had 3 boys, ages 1, 6, and 9. The boys' bedrooms were upstairs. They couldn't carry the 9-year-old up the stairs in the middle of a meltdown. And even if they couldn't leave the 1-year-old unattended. But they had a couch. They designated that couch as the cool down area. They showed the kids what to do. Punch the couch, jump on the couch, bite the cushions. Whatever they needed to do to that poor couch, they could. How did they get the kids to use it? First, they used it themselves. They modeled healthy anger management, and they normalized the need to express anger physically. They also gave the boys a nickel every time they used it. But wait, won't they game the system? Won't they just punch the couch to get a nickel? Yep, that's exactly what happened. They did it so much that it became a habit. They did it when they were angry, and they did it when they just felt like punching something. It was well worth the money, and all those nickels, way cheaper than therapy. Now, the third thing that I want to tell you about is what I call the mood clock. You can probably answer this question. At what point in the day are your child's meltdowns most likely to happen? Some are touchier in the morning, some in the afternoon. There are also some elements of the daily routine that are more likely to trigger meltdowns, like schoolwork or having to brush teeth. If you take this mood clock into consideration, you can schedule around it. For instance, if your child is cheerful in the morning, that's a great time to schedule a Zoom meeting with a teacher. If they're at their best after 10 a.m., schedule your family outings after that time. Of course, it's not always possible to do this, but taking the mood clock into account will be helpful. Fourth, let's talk about modeling. Modeling is one of the most effective ways to teach. It's how your child learned to walk, to eat, and to cuss. This is not explicit teaching or lecturing. This is about making your own process transparent so that your child can see how you do it. They are paying attention. Don't worry. When you're frustrated that you wanted to make chicken for dinner but forgot to take it out of the freezer, verbalize it. Oh, rats! I forgot to take the chicken out. Oh, that makes me so mad. I don't want to have to think of something else now. Hit the couch, stomp around, then problem solve. Fine. I guess I can make spaghetti. It'll be okay. And last, but certainly not least, we have good old-fashioned boundary setting. You must have an effective discipline and boundary setting system. When you have this, you decrease the number of meltdowns that are triggered by arguing about whether something should be done or not, like putting on shoes or picking up toys. Some kids have learned to use tantrums to get out of doing things they are told to do. I know an 8-year-old who was quite upfront about this. She said, "If you tell me to pick up my clothes, I'll scream, and nobody wants that." But if you have an effective system, kids quickly learn that the tantrums are not communication tools. They're not ways to get what they want or take control of a situation. The system needs to be simple enough for you to be able to use consistently, and it also needs to meet your strong-willed child's need for control. Creating those systems is something I help parents do. I'll tell you how I can help you if you want to stay tuned at the end of the webinar when I describe my listening and emotional regulation program. Okay, let's talk about physical aggression. It's important to be really clear that tantrums and rage can happen without physical aggression. They're not one and the same. You can have a meltdown without hurting anyone. Aggression and violence must be prevented. Some people say that children hit their parents because they feel safe in releasing their frustration on their parents, and therefore it's okay. I disagree. I think children do it because they feel angry, and they direct that anger at people whom they perceive to be in opposition to them. Past age 2, physical aggression is not okay, and it should not be permitted. Would it make sense to you to tell your child to let their friend hit them because they are a safe friend? No. You don't want your child to let other people hit them. What do you want them to do if someone hits them? You want them to go away from that person. So that is what you need to model. When children hit you or another family member, they should be separated from that person until they are done hitting and can either be calm or can be angry without hitting. The cool down room is the best tool for this separation. Second best, if you are the one being hit, is for you to go into a place where the child cannot reach you. Now, this strategy is sometimes a big trigger for people. They fear that it is punitive, that the child will take it as rejection, and the child will feel abandoned. And indeed, you could make it feel like that. But if you do it the first time they hit, before you get really mad, you can do it with calm objectivity. Going to the cool down room is not a punishment for hitting. It's an alternative to hitting. Now, this is where it gets very personal. And you have very specific questions and issues. Some of you are asking, how can I separate from him? He's bigger than me. How do I separate myself from her and protect the baby at the same time? How do I do this without it feeling punitive? How can I do this when I'm personally triggered by the aggression? We will need to think this through. There are solutions to all of those issues, and they're all quite personal. So we're not going to be able to get into them here. I will say that one thing parents learn in our work together is how to use new tone and language. For instance, instead of saying, "That's it, you hit me, go to your room," you say, "Since you hit me, we can't be together right now. I'll take you to the cool down room and you can come out when you're done hitting." Or you say nothing and simply go in your room and close the door. In the program I'll tell you about in a few minutes, we can make a plan for you to respond to the aggression without judgment and without adding your own anger as fuel. This is a solvable problem. Kids do learn to redirect their anger away from aggression into a healthy channel. So let me tell you a couple of stories. The first is about Tucker, a 10-year-old overachiever who was accused of ruining the family fun every single Saturday. The family worked hard all week, as did Tucker. On Saturday, the parents wanted to have adventures, but Tucker would have huge fits that ruined the whole weekend, and it happened every single Saturday. When I said every Saturday, did you think of the mood clock? Good work. We focused our strategies on honoring Tucker's mood clock. We took allowing to an extreme here, and we actually scheduled an early Saturday morning meltdown. Tucker even helped us plan it, and he advised his parents on what would trigger it for him. So Saturday morning after breakfast, his mom told him that he had to go clean his room. That did it. He went to his room and had a huge meltdown, and the family was in the car, headed to a great adventure by 10 o'clock. Tucker said he felt so much better, and he felt like his parents liked and respected him. Problem solved. Here's another story. I started working with Lily when she was 5. She was oppositional, defiant, and violent. She hit her mom and even hurt her cat when she was angry. What we focused on was for a way for her to contain her anger. We needed a way for the mom and the cat to separate from her when Lily was hitting and kicking. We set up a cool down room in Lily's room where she could hit and kick her mattress. Lily was adopted, and her first couple of years were very difficult, as was the adoption transition. So her mom was very sensitive to her feelings. She really just wanted to empathize, and she was nervous that the girl would feel abandoned if she just had to stay in her cool down room. But just empathizing with her didn't stop the hitting. So we worked with the mom to find ways to feel connected even when she was separated. She sat on the other side of the door and hummed. She passed love notes into her daughter's room, even as her daughter raged and tore up the notes. This girl is now 12 years old, and she still goes to her room to have meltdowns. We did take the cat out of the home because the progress was slow at first. Lily herself admitted that the cat should not live with her because she could not promise not to hurt it. But I'm very happy to tell you that she has recently adopted a little dog who is deaf and who had a very difficult puppyhood. And Lily is extremely nurturing, patient, and kind to the dog now. I wanted to tell you these stories to give you hope that with consistent attention to these 5 things, allowing, containing, the mood clock, modeling, and boundary setting, children do learn to manage their intensity, control their anger, and be empathetic, passionate leaders. The strategies I shared with you today work because they keep you from adding fuel to the fire, and they are a fit for kids who tend to want to resist you. And they work because it's really okay for kids to have intense emotions as long as they do it safely. I hope that I've given you some hope, some inspiration, and some good ideas that you can put in place today. If you have a few extra minutes, I'd love to describe a program that I've designed specifically to help you with these anger issues. It's called the Listening and Emotional Regulation Program. This is a structured program that we've developed for you. The program is designed to get your kids to listen and to have fewer meltdowns. This program is for you if you regularly find yourself fighting with your kids or yelling at them because they just won't cooperate with you. If you have kids who really fall at the higher end of the spectrum when it comes to oppositional, even defiant behavior, emotional meltdowns and tantrums, and physical aggression. For an example, if you had to rate your child's problem behavior on a scale of 1 to 10, you'd probably rate it at a 5 or higher. Now, if your kids' problem behaviors are really not at that level, this program may be more than you need. For instance, if your child responds well to positive discipline strategies, or 1, 2, 3 magic, or rewards charts, or talking about why the problem is a problem and what we can do next time, then I would expect to be able to help you resolving your challenges in 1 or 2 sessions. So if this is you, you could just send me an email and let's talk. But if you're feeling really challenged by your child's reactivity, here's what we're going to do to help you. We'll start with a half-hour initial conversation where you'll tell me about your family, your child, and the specific problems you're facing. This will help me to really understand your needs and goals, and it will help us to tailor the program to what you need the most so we can hit the ground running. You'll also complete a questionnaire where you'll rate the severity and frequency of the issues you're having. This gives us a really clear metric of how we're doing and lets you see your progress over time. The program runs for 6 weeks. You'll meet with me by video once a week for an hour each time. There are 3 steps in the program. In step 1, you'll learn the best way to respond to meltdowns and physical aggressions as they're happening in real time. The reason we start here is because when we set firm boundaries with strong-willed kids, they sometimes respond with extreme anger. And if you don't know how to handle that, these meltdowns can really keep you from doing what you need to do in order to teach them to listen. We will also make a plan for what to do when your child is aggressive. Then in step 2 of the program, you'll learn and practice a simple, straightforward process for teaching your kids to listen. This process is specially designed for highly strong-willed kids. A lot of the parenting strategies for listening ask parents to basically approach this problem indirectly, say by connecting more with your child, or explaining why the thing you're asking for is really important, or by working on your own emotional reactions. But we have found that a more direct approach is really best with highly strong-willed kids, and some elements of this may surprise you. The approach you'll learn is simple and straightforward, but it's not entirely intuitive, and it adds elements that you don't often see in typical strategies today. Now in step 1 of the program, you learn how to handle your child's meltdowns. Something that I hear you asking for, though, is fewer meltdowns in the first place. That's what step 3 is for. In step 3 of this program, you'll learn how to teach your child to respond to their intense frustration, anger, and also feelings of anxiety and sadness. And the things we'll teach you are a lot more effective than the typical feelings identification charts or just talking about feelings. A lot of people, even a lot of experts, think that talking about feelings or identifying them is one of the best things you can do to help. And those things are valuable because kids do need to be able to identify their feelings. Feelings charts like that do increase their emotional vocabulary. But as I told you, you actually use different parts of the brain for processing strong feelings and verbal insight-based processes. That's one reason why talking about feelings and feelings charts often fail with really emotionally intense kids. These kids do learn about their feelings and are able to identify them, but their brains are not going to switch to verbalizing, labeling, and analyzing when they're in meltdown mode. So you will discover alternative things you can do to teach your child to manage their strong emotions. At the end of the day, in step 3, not only are we going for fewer meltdowns, but even more importantly, your child is developing emotional intelligence and self-regulation. So you'll meet by me with video every week. We will create a clear plan for the next week, and I'll send you an email with the key things to remember and work on. Now, in addition to meeting with me once a week, you will also be able to consult with me by text or email between those sessions. A lot of parents find this to be really helpful. You may need a reminder of something that makes the difference in the strategy working or not, or you may feel like life's getting in the way and you just need to get help to get back on track. These between session check-ins will help you stay focused and on track so that you can get the full benefit of your investment in the program. So here's what you get in the listening and emotional regulation program. You get tools and strategies for handling meltdowns in the moment. You get strategies for keeping cool and collected in the face of the defiance and meltdowns. You get a template, an actual flow chart that helps you know what to do when your child doesn't listen, has a tantrum, or is physically aggressive. Your response needs to be different depending on which of these behaviors is happening. And sometimes one behavior morphs into another, which can make it hard to remember which strategy to use. You'll also get tools and exercises to help you really learn the strategies we'll be showing you. There is a learning curve to this. You'll have a self-assessment tool that helps you course correct when it feels like things are no longer working. You get a written plan for navigating your most challenging situations or your most challenging parts of the day. And you will have a sense of empowerment and a newfound confidence in your ability to help your child navigate problems that would have resulted in conflict and intense frustration and anger prior to your work with us. You know, a lot of parents use psychotherapy as a way to try to solve kids' challenging behavior and defiance. And therapy has value. But what I've seen is that therapy typically takes a lot longer than 6 weeks to change behavior. I won't go into all the reasons for that, but as an example, like I was talking about in step 3, therapy often uses more cognitive-based or talk-oriented approaches. So at the end of the day, it's often a lot less efficient, which means it's a lot more expensive. And I see this a lot in my practice. One of our clients just said this week, "My daughter got further with you in 20 minutes than she has in 3 months with her therapist." So you have the 6 live video sessions. We have the in-between session support by text and email, hard copy tools to help you learn skills and to stay on track, and the custom written plans for the hardest parts of your day. If you wanted to just call me up and get each of these things individually hour by hour, you'd be paying about $2,000. But I want to make it accessible, and I also really want to emphasize that your commitment to taking action and your commitment to following through is worth a lot. So we've discounted the whole thing so that the whole package is just $1,350. And I know some of you are thinking, this program would be really helpful. I'm going to think about it some more. but I know how easy it is for life to get in the way. So we've added some incentives for you to not just think about it, but actually do it. It's the action that's important. So if you enroll by next Saturday, by June 6th, we're going to give you also a 1-hour video consult with a professional organizer to help you reduce chaos and clutter. In the video sessions that you and I have, we'll see where you can use help to create an organization system, to declutter, or to make this cool down space for the tantrums and meltdowns. And she will help you with that. You also get a follow-up session at no charge that'll take place 3 weeks after the program ends. This will help you stay on track for the long term. So if you're ready, send us an email or call us. We are ready to help you solve these problems for the long term. I want to thank you very much for attending today's session. You are the most important person in your child's life, and you are absolutely the perfect parent for them. Thank you so much for attending. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.